We have been quarantined in Elvi de Anton for over 60 days. We're coming up on 9 weeks of quarantine, people. This is our story.
When did you start noticing things about Corona?
I started noticing things about Corona. Back in December was the first time I heard the name coronavirus, but I just always thought about it as the Chinese virus. I never really took it to thought. We actually talked about it in school, and we were like, hey, the coronavirus, have you guys heard of it? And our teacher was like, oh yeah, that's just the Chinese flu. Nothing really is going to come of that. I remember him saying that clearly.
At like the very beginning of quarantine. We got a flight!
Got a flight. Hey, we got a flight. They have a flight. It will be 9 weeks that I've been here. Oh my gosh.
Mama just screamed.
You're leaving.
I'm leaving.
You're leaving in
We're
5 days.
leaving on the 25th.
You're leaving in 5 days.
Okay. So I have a friend in China, and I heard a little bit of Corona stuff from him, and you had a friend in China that you were talking about. I remember in like January you were talking about your Chinese friend who hadn't been out in like 3 months or something and was like all pale and was playing video games for like 3 months. Yeah. One of the first things I remember my dad saying something like a whole province in China is like quarantined, and we're like, whoa, a whole province? Like that's a lot of people. It's like millions of people.
Yeah.
Little did we know. We had no idea. In February was the first time it like kind of affected me. We went to the airport and we were checking in for our flight, and the lady at the desk was like, have you been to China in the last 14 days? And we're like, no, like, and it was like the first time anything had come to us personally about Corona.
It wasn't until deep quarantine that it actually started to really affect me, my future plans. So 6 months ago, I was planning to go to a flight academy, 2 flight academies actually, one in North Dakota and one in Minneapolis. Both of those got canceled because of the coronavirus, and that was basically one of the first times that this actually had a impact on my life, and not only like my present life, but my future life as becoming a pilot. This was my first time because as a 16-year-old, I have the opportunity to now, begin building up my flight hours, and because of the coronavirus, I will now be a year behind.
I didn't think it would affect summer at all because the first time it started affecting us was back in February, and we weren't planning to do anything till June, and so we were like, oh yeah, like, as I kept saying at the beginning, I was like, as long as it doesn't affect our summer, it'll be totally fine, which now it really hasn't because we just now got a flight like 2 seconds ago, but I mean, it has affected so much more than we ever thought would.
Yeah. All right, keep going.
So we flew back February 22nd. I flew back by myself from Los Angeles, and people in the airport was wearing masks. Oh, I remember flying to Reno was the first time I saw people out and about wearing masks, and I was like making fun of them. I was like, they're ridiculous. I was like, what is this actually going to do? Like, it's not going to affect us. Why are people wearing masks? And then flying back, I flew through Los Angeles, which is a big airport, and they all, right after we got off the plane, they like lined us up, and there were people in full hazmat suits, and they checked our temperature, and I remember just being kind of shocked at that, because I really didn't think that would happen. Like in LA, the airport, there were so many people, it was so busy, and then we get to Panama, and they're like checking your temperature with full hazmat suits.
Yeah.
I thought that was crazy.
I remember that. I remember you were coming back to Tucumán, and you had a fever.
Yeah.
And you were like kind of shook when they went to scan you. Yeah. Luckily, they didn't catch you. I mean, that's unbelievable. You would have been stuck there. What would they have done?
No, because I remember thinking, like, I felt the heat rise in me because I knew I was a little bit sick, and I knew I had had a fever a couple days ago.
Yeah.
And I felt like heat rising my face, and I like got all flushed and stuff, and I was scared that they would stop me, but then I was like, nah, they're not going to stop me, because I was like, there's got to be so many people coming through here with fevers, they have to like know the difference. But now, I didn't think about that, but I really wasn't worried that they would stop me, because I thought they like know the difference. But I think
Yeah.
if they had caught any bit of fever, they might
Any
have
bit
stopped
of
me.
fever. And just going into the El Rey, the local supermarket here, about a week ago, I walked in and I'd been like sprinting full power to the supermarket, and I was like sweating and everything, and the guy felt my head, and I was like not even a degree over, and he wouldn't let me into the store for a
Really?
good 10 minutes. Yeah.
So it was about 2 weeks after I got back from Reno that like full quarantine happened, because I went straight to your house from there and I stayed with you for a couple days, and then we filmed a wedding. So glad that wedding happened when it did. So I wrote here, I would say it all started for me the beginning of March. I was at the Tomlitz house during that time, and that's when we really started thinking and talking about it. I remember that because your dad, like, who isn't on his phone a lot, like, I don't see him on his phone a lot,
Yeah.
was, like,
I remember
on
this.
his phone, and he was, like, remember he would, like, tell us stats or whatever of, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, he was just talking about it, and your dad was, like, for sure that we were going to get quarantined, and I was like, no, we're not
He
gonna
kept
get
saying, he
quarantined.
was like, this country is going to be shut down, and it will happen.
And
he was so
my dad
sure.
was saying it wouldn't, and so I was, like, believing my dad. 'Cause
I didn't really think about it.
I remember being shocked by each new thing. So each new thing that was happening, like the first case in Panama, do you remember that night when your dad was like, oh my gosh, there's a case in Panama, there's a lady here from like Italy or something
I remember that.
who has a case. So I remember the first case in Panama. I remember when the store started only allowing 50 people in at a time and
Yes.
having to stand 6 feet apart. I remember the first church that I heard of closing was Crossroads. And this must have been after your school has stopped. So talk about your school stopping.
Oh yeah. So funny story.
Funny story.
I went up to the beach house and with Asher, with all my buddies,
yeah.
and we were all chilling up there.
Yeah.
And it was one of the last weekends. It was the last week.
weekend.
It was actually the last weekend before. It was the last church service. And Asher and I.
And I was like, Marky, you better come to church and see me, because he's like 5 minutes away from church.
It was like a massive swell. It was really gnarly.
It
It was so gnarly. It was okay. And I remember you asking me about it, about going to church, and we were like, yeah, we'll look into that. And we ended up like surfing one of the biggest swells of our lives.
Closed. So we went to church that Sunday, and then like in the middle of the week, Crossroads closed, and their church services closed, and I was like, our church is not going to close. Like, ours is a small church. Like, we're not afraid to get the virus. And then the government said that all religious like establishments had to be closed. So
Yes.
that all happened that week.
That was-
because
that
we
was
went
it.
to church that weekend, and nobody was really thinking about like what was going to happen. And then I think it was that Wednesday, your school got closed. So you went back to school, and then my family came in, and we picked him up from school.
Yeah.
Him and Elise up, and then we went to the park, and that was the last time I saw the Fultons. And on the way back to your house from the park, you got a call from Max, and you were like freaking out in the car.
Yeah. That was so much fun. We were all in the Clayton Park and hanging out, and then that was the last time we got to see Max. Everything was normal.
Everything was normal.
We got out of school that day. That was the last day of school. Amy actually came to the school, picked me up.
This was March.
This was March 16th. No.
March 11th.
March, yeah, around there. I believe it was around there. Either way, Amy picked me up. I remember saying goodbye to a few of my teachers, and just like every other day, that same night, we got a phone call that school was canceled for an entire month.
You were freaking out in the car, and we were like, oh my, I thought that like Max or Anders had gotten hit by a car on their way home, because we had literally just left the park. And I was like, oh my gosh, somebody just died. And he's like, we're out of school for a month. And then I was all excited because I was like, oh, you're going to be homeschooled. I was like teasing you about how you were going to be homeschooled for a month.
For 1 month.
For 1 month.
Right.
Yeah, and that didn't happen. I said in here, the second week of March was when things really started happening, and that it was like the second week of March that happened. So then you came to my house right after that, because my mom was like, okay, pack a bag, come to my house. So you did for like 2 days, and then we went back to your house, and I was going to go to the mall with a friend for her birthday, and she said she couldn't get on any buses, and I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like, why can't you get on a bus to Albrook, which is like the biggest mall? So she couldn't come, so then I went with you and the Fultons to the lake, like a river.
Mm-hmm.
And we hung out there, and then I wrote here, Sunday, March 14th, lakes, pools, and beaches closed. So the day after we went to the river
Everything
was the
closed.
last time that the rivers were open or anything. So
Yes.
that was...
And then Amy was staying at our house, and she wanted to get back to El Valle, and the
I
roads
was
were
stuck
closed.
for a couple days because some people were like rioting, and they were mad that people were coming into the interior from the city because everybody was off of school, so everybody wanted to go out to their like beach houses or whatever. And the Panamanians were like scared that they would bring the virus from the city out into the interior, which is probably what happened. But anyway, they were blocking off the roads, so I was scared to be on a bus by myself in case like the road got blocked and then I was just like stuck in this bus. So I convinced Marky to come with me.
Well, at the last second, it was a Wednesday morning.
I was like, come with me,
And
come with
Amy
me.
kept
I don't
saying,
wanna go by myself.
"Come with me. I can't go by myself. I need a gentleman
That's
to
not
come
what I
with
said.
me." No. It
No,
wasn't like
I
that.
was teasing you. I was like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a good thing you're coming with me because somebody might use you as a toothpick because that's what your dad said, and I thought that was pretty funny. Strange.
The thing about Panama culture, Panamanians generally really get freaked out over things in the news. They don't go to find their own source. They hear what everybody's saying and they will believe it, and they'll go to great measures of believing it. That's something that you don't really see in the US in the same way. And basically we went up together
So I remember
to your house.
I was like, Mark, come with me, and you were like, okay, fine, I'll come with you.
Only for a few days.
And you were like running around, getting your stuff and like getting your school books together to be there for about a week. I was thinking that you would probably.
I
be
was
there
thinking
for about
4
a week.
days, 3
Okay.
days max.
And then I knew that he had a book that he was reading that he was going to start reading the week after. And I was like, Mark, just bring this book. Like, what if you get stuck up there? And we were joking about being quarantined together because at that point, we were like sure. At that point, it was about, we were like positive that we were going to get quarantined. We just didn't know when. And so it was kind of iffy you coming. Like, we weren't like sure, but
I was really sure that I was not going to be quarantined
But
here.
we-
I knew it was going to come, but I thought it was further down the road.
yeah, I thought it was more of a joke because we talked
Yeah.
about it, but I didn't think it would actually happen. That was a while ago.
That was so
And I
long
remember
ago.
being like, oh my gosh, Mark, there's like 2 people over there wearing masks. And we were like, what? Where?
The night after Chuck had returned, I'd been there for about 3 days, and Chuck said to all of us,
Oh my gosh, they just shut off all flights from Europe for 30 days. He was like, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky. I would've
just
been stuck
skirted
there
in,
for
like-
30 days.
you finessed them, dude.
Rules of quarantine are you have to stay on your property unless it is your time to go out. So for the first couple, like week, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't know. It was, you can go out whatever day in your allotted time, and your time is the last number on your passport. So for us, it's 3 o'clock.
Our time is actually the same. Chances
So
happen to be.
we could have gone at the same time, but then they came up with a new thing that says women can go out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Men can go out
Right.
the other days.
And we had a week where we could have actually gone out at the same time
Yeah, but
together.
we didn't. Why
And-
didn't we?
No.
Anyway,
We didn't value going out back then.
I know. I know. That's crazy. And then now they've changed it to Saturday and Sunday. No one is allowed out. So men get 2 days a week to go out. Women get 3 days a week to go out.
And then Tuesday is the day after 3. No, we get. Yeah, there's a 4-day period in which men actually cannot go outside. We're stuck. And that means for people in, like, apartments in the city, you're just, like, that's awful, man.
Yeah. For grocery stores, the kind of transition that has been, the first thing they did was say only 50 people allowed in the grocery store at once, and you need to stand 6 feet apart. Nobody really does that because I've been in the store and nobody really stands 6 feet apart. And then what happened after that was they wouldn't let you in unless you were wearing a mask. And then I think in the city they even checked that it's your right time, but here in El Valle they don't check that.
Right.
And then you have to put on hand sanitizer when you go in, and you have to get your temperature checked before you go into the store. So you have to be wearing a mask, put on hand sanitizer, be in the right hour on the right day, with only 50 people in the store. What else? you have to get your temperature checked. So going to the store is like the only thing you can do.
You know, we listen to people a lot. Many of my friends in the States talk about how terrible quarantine
I'm
is.
so bored.
Going
I'm like,
crazy and how awful and the extent of quarantine. They're taking away our basic human rights. And it's true, it's awful. But down here, quarantine is nothing like what it is like in the States. There's zero comparison.
I tell my friends
it's a
what it's
joke.
like,
Yes.
and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's actually pretty wild." Like, I think I heard the other day that Panama is like one of the strictest countries in the Americas.
In the entire South Americas. Yeah, right. And, you know, growing up in Panama, being born in Panama, I've always considered being a Panamanian as being an American. I've always thought Panama is a very free country. That's always been my mindset. And it wasn't until now that it really hit me that Panama's not a free country.
What quarantine basically is for us is that you're not allowed to leave your property unless it's on the right day at the right hour. And even us, like, we weren't strictly following that because they say only one person per household is allowed to go out, but they can't really check that. So we were just, like, 3 of us would go out in our times. But you're only allowed to go out to the store or to get medicine, anything, like, essential. Anything in the store that's considered non-essential is, like, crossed off. Alcohol, you couldn't buy that up until about a week ago, so about 8 weeks without buying alcohol, which everybody was like, wow, we need our alcohol. And,
Your parents.
But I got stopped by the cops only once on my way to the store. I've been to the store 3 times, and I've seen the cops every time that I've gone, but one time...
When the cops stopped you, what did they ask for? What did they say?
I didn't even notice him at first because I was yelling at muppers down the street to come to me, and he was like, "Oh, is that your dog?" And basically he just asked me where I was going, and yeah.
He didn't ask for any...
He didn't ask me
IDs.
for my passport or anything, but he did ask me where I was going, and I just told him I was going to the store, which was...
That is kind of rare because usually they would ask for your, your passport or your
you have to take your passport with you. You have to be wearing a mask. You're not supposed to be with anyone else, really.
Right.
So, if you went out for the max amount of time that you can per week, for men it would be 4 hours, and for women it would be 6 hours a week out of the house. But so, wrapping up, going into the future, up until about half an hour ago, we had lost our tickets about a week ago when we realized and were told that the airport was closed for another month. So we quickly got on a list for any humanitarian flights, and we just now got a call this afternoon, and so now we do have a flight on the 25th. The quarantine will be
There's
over.
light at the end of the tunnel!
But I'm actually kind of sad because I've genuinely enjoyed this quarantine. Me too. I think it's because of the ducks.
We have been quarantined in El Valle de Anton for over 60 days. Oh, wait. Okay, sorry.